I'm Bill Hansen, Senior Product Manager for StorageCraft. My focus is on cloud services, and you'll see that as I talk today. I'm pretty biased towards cloud and the services and different things we offer and take care of there. But we're going to start this webinar on if you think your IT security can stop ransomware, think again. It's definitely something we see, and I wanted to get into it with everyone and talk and share some of the knowledge we have at StorageCraft and what we see. As we're right in the middle of it when it comes to backup and recovery. We're really right in the middle of issues and things. We work with many partners, and we get to see real time what's happening in the industry and who's affected by what, and share a little bit of what we know with all of you, and hopefully help you to learn and understand how best to handle your different data or clients' data or partners, however you do it, to make sure you're protected with ransomware and other things. So with that, I'll get started, and we'll just mention that at the end of this, towards the end, we'll have a question and answer period, and it'll be kind of online, so in the chat window you can put your questions, and we can address those as we get toward the end of the presentation. So anything that comes up, just put it in there, and I'll do my best to address it. You know, earlier this year, just before COVID-19 and all the pandemic stuff that's happened, I was planning to be there in Australia and New Zealand and visit a number of different partners of ours. And unfortunately, that didn't happen, as most all travel's pretty much been stopped for everyone. But I wanted to make sure we reach out to you and still have this webinar and talk about these things. Hopefully, most of you are pretty familiar with our company, but StorageCraft, you know our saying, always safe, always accessible, always optimized. That's where your data's at, here with StorageCraft. And I'll just give a few highlights of our company for those who maybe aren't as familiar. We were founded back in 2003. You know, a profitable company, been around a long time. When you think about it, 17 years in the data and technology industry is quite a while. We are global. Headquartered in Draper, Utah. That's where I'm located, so I'm here in Mountain Time. And but we have offices around the world, in Sydney, in Europe, and different places. We really, our channel focus, really want to help our service providers and our partners. That's really where we focus. And we have end users as well, but have a lot of investment in our company. We're coming out with new technology all the time. Some key products, and we'll touch on those a little bit today. And really, we've been around a long time. For those, again, who don't know us or aren't as familiar, we have millions of servers and VMs that we protect, and we've been doing that for a long time through our Shadow Protect and other services. So we have many petabytes of data that's being protected through our services. And just so you know, we really cover a wide gamut of the verticals, you know, from enterprise, healthcare to engineering, construction, education, government. We really have solutions that can be customized and flexible to whatever the vertical is. We all create data, and obviously that makes it a great place for us to be able to cross different verticals and help people wherever they need it with protecting their data and restoring it when needed. With that kind of intro, I want to get into a few things. And just first thing, what is the cause of a disaster recovery event? I got some pictures you see there. This is usually what comes to mind for most people when I think of a disaster. They think of natural events, you know, hurricanes in the U.S. It seems like every season they just keep getting rougher. We've had the fires. I know it's devastating in Australia this year. Lots of devastation that happens around the world from floods and fires and even avalanches and whatnot. And that usually is what comes to mind when you think of a disaster recovery event. How are you going to protect your data, your business, when these things happen? What's interesting is you do a little research and you try to figure out, okay, what's the cause? When you look at the actual data, what is it? And I looked around and got a few different images here to show some information, some statistics about what's causing unplanned downtime or disaster recovery. And what's interesting here is the number one cause is not those things we just took a look at. It really comes down to human errors and you know, mistakes and things that we make. We're not perfect, and things happen. That's, as you can see in the main statistic, about 60% are human caused. Whereas when you look at your fire and flood and those natural disasters, that's really more of the, 25% of the time, 20% of the time, that's what the cause is. So we need to be prepared for those events, obviously, but at the same time, it's that human error that really is the bigger cause of disaster recovery events. I wanted to share a little bit of that. It seems like all the numbers are not all the same as you look at different sources, but the percentage or the mix is about the same in terms of where disaster recovery events are coming from. Now, one of the newest things, of course, that's been growing rapidly is the growing threat of cybercrime and ransomware in particular. It's unfortunate, but that's the industry. That's now $1 billion industry for those people who do this, and they've really targeted service providers and others who are at the heart of protecting and taking care of data in all these companies. And really, that's what's happening, from the crypto locker to different things. It's prevalent all over, and it's happening all the time. Ransomware is real. I think I'm speaking to those who probably know that better than any. But it's a real threat, and we have to be prepared for it. Again, a few statistics, and it seems like every time I look for more stats on this, it changes all the time, but you'll see quite easily the key takeaway. But back in 2017, it was estimated that ransomware costs more than $5 billion. And that's not in terms of the ransom paid, but that was how much it cost in terms of revenue and business. That impact to business was $5 billion. And it's expected to grow well beyond that in 2020, even in 2019, 11 billion, and it wasn't very far off from that. So really becoming a major business for those who are doing those things. In terms of what they make, but the 11 billion, can you imagine that impact on the economy and those people who are running businesses who've lost that? Another key one here I wanted to call out is that 77% of organizations experience cyber attack while running up-to-date security solutions. So even though you're doing everything you can to keep your security to the latest and greatest, your antivirus, we're still being attacked by ransomware, and they're finding new holes and new ways to get through all the time. And it's estimated that a new business will fall victim to ransomware every 14 seconds. And that was a 2019 statistic. So it's a few months old, but I know it's not changed very much. If anything, it's happening even more often now. And again, the key takeaway here is ransomware is growing, and sadly it's grown quite quickly and has a huge impact on business and what happens to your data. And it's really come down to, it's no longer a question of if, but when you're going to get hit by ransomware. So let me share a little bit about what we see at StorageCraft. Again, like I said, we're right in the heart of this. We do data protection and recovery. We work with people all the time who are facing ransomware and other crypto problems. And we've seen over a 600% increase in ransomware-caused restorations. It really has been phenomenal, where over time, a few years ago, we'd say, usually when people need to do recovery, it's because they did have some funny disaster, be it I shouldn't say funny, but a natural disaster, or they made a mistake, lost an image, someone kind of hit the delete button when they didn't mean to, installed a package of software that had some side effects. And so you're getting one or two machines, maybe a handful of the machines in a business would be damaged and they would need to restore. And what's amazing now is with ransomware, entire sites are being wiped out or being crypto locked or something, and they need to restore many, many machines and across different clients. And we're seeing that. It's real and it's growing quite a bit. So really the question comes down to this, and you're probably very familiar with this saying, well, do you have a plan? And when you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Or conversely, no one plans to fail, they simply fail to plan. And I think that's so true, and everyone has a strategy, or they should have a strategy, on how to handle different types of disasters, particularly ransomware. As I showed earlier, it's not so much if it will happen, it's when, and what are your plans to recover if that or when that occurs. So I want to share just a little bit more. Again, just sharing some of the knowledge we have. And we had done a survey not too long ago on data storage trends and the protection trends. And I want to share just a few of those results, not the whole thing. And this survey, just so you know, a little background, it represented lots of different companies of different sizes. As you can see here, kind of the mix from, the smaller, down to 100, 500 employees, all the way up to, 1,000, 2,500 employees, as well as different sizes of storage content that they're trying to store from, just a few terabytes up to more than a petabyte. And what's their cloud strategy, whether they have one or not. Trying to get a good mix of different companies when we did this survey. And again, across industries, as we're able to service different industries, we wanted to get feedback from all of them that we could, and you can see the mix of those represented. Mostly manufacturing, technology were the biggest, education, financial services. But as you can see, really wide breadth of people and companies represented here. So one of the questions we asked was about data recovery and, how quickly can you recover based upon your strategy and what you've got in place? And it was interesting that only 15% of those we surveyed could recover from a data loss within an hour. As you can see, most, if you get a little bigger and look at 24 hours, most are able to recover in about 24 hours, but only a very small number can do it less than an hour. So very encouraging in some ways. People have plans in place, which is great, but it's that RTO and RPO that becomes important, and how much time can they handle being down while they recover, something to think about. Now, what about your recovery plans? Well, you got backup, and what is your plan? And majority of people say they have a data recovery plan, which is great. You see the 96% there. And then the one thing that was hard is how often do you test it? And close to 22%, a quarter, don't actually test their plan. It's really critical, we've learned, that you test your plan out so you know what to do if something were to happen. It's always a sad day when we get calls from someone needing help, they need to recover, and we ask them what they've done, when their last test was, and they've never done it. They never set anything up. They never did those things where they could do some best practices to make things much easier when the disaster occurred. So it's important to test that. So we asked also a few questions around ransomware and ransomware recovery. How many felt that they could recover. And it is pretty interesting, as you can see here. Many felt they have a plan in place and are confident, about 2/3 felt like they can recover from a ransomware attack, which is great. It's the other side that was a little bit scary. You say the 15% we'd lose our data, 11% I got no idea if we could recover from ransomware. And maybe you fall into some of those categories. Here's a great time to think about what you can do and what your plan is to address it. So, and fundamentally, you see kind of a on our slide here is just put a disaster recovery plan in place. It's so important. It becomes your last line of defense. After you've done all those other things, which are good, you set up your security, your antivirus, your different things, your policies for work, your anti-phishing, all those type of things. You need to have that disaster recovery plan because things do happen. And how are you going to recover from that when it does? Just a quote, Jonathan here from Scott Aerospace. I'll read it because I think it's worth it. We were hit and not because we were careless. In the face of a targeted attack, your preventative measures can and often will fall short. When this happens, you need to have a DR plan in place. I love what he said. I think he nailed it. You can do everything you can and things happen. They just do. And so it's critical that you know what your plan is to pick yourself back up when that does happen. It's really the last line of defense. So let's talk about a plan. We're not going to go through all the nitty-gritty details of a plan, but what should you consider as you're looking at your disaster recovery plan? First, plan and document. I think this is pretty critical, is to write it down. So many just have, oh, well, we'll do this, this, or that, and a few people understand what it is, but maybe the whole organization doesn't. So get it written down, define exactly what your recovery time objective is, your recovery point objectives. Those different things that are important. Who's going to be involved? What kind of equipment do you need? How are you going to do communications and notifications, that type of thing, and document it. Secondly, test and execute. As I mentioned before, and I'll probably mention it again, it's so important to test and execute that plan. It's really sad when so many have never tested it, because that's what you need to do, or else you're not really prepared and you don't have that confidence that you can recover should something happen. And then lastly, review and revise. This is a great cycle of disaster recovery planning. Do that test. What worked? Maybe something didn't. Maybe your communications didn't work quite well enough. The right people didn't know. Maybe you found a hole in your test where you couldn't recover, or maybe a security vulnerability that you were able to uncover. So maybe you need to do something else, set up some different alerts, a chance to review and revise. And then the cycle can go around and around. And it's really up to you on how often you run a test and do your plan. At a minimum, I'd say you need to do it at least once a year, but we see many who do it about once a quarter to make sure their plan's in place and just make sure they're ready. So here at StorageCraft, of course, we have a number of products to help address your disaster recovery and our backup and protection. One of those things are OneSafe converged scale-out storage. I'm not sure how familiar you are with all of our offerings there, but it's our hardware-based scale-out object-based storage. It's a file front end. Also, we have ShadowSafe. This is our next generation of data protection software. So we have Shadow Protect, which has been around a lot longer, and our newer ShadowSafe, a new SLA-oriented data protection. And really, again, next generation in the way it addresses data protection and recovery. And then lastly, cloud services. That's the place where I spend most of my time, where we purpose-build a disaster recovery cloud platform. Again, disaster recovery as a service to deliver and help you with your plans and what you do to protect yourself against these different things that can happen. So with all that, I said quite a bit, but how often does this happen? As I said, it's getting more and more frequent all the time. I wanted to share just a few use cases or scenarios where we've seen ransomware hit and how people have recovered given that they had a plan and were able to execute it. This one, Glazerite Renders, Glazerite, they're a company over in the UK, and it's really important that they have their data, secure, just like anybody. And they really had a robust plan, and they adopt some of the most rigorous rules and regulations on protecting their data and their security. And they work with a partner, and they were providing them solutions. And despite all that work with some of the leading, and like I said, rigorous approach they had on security and protection, ransomware still hit them. And this is back in 2017, but they fell victim to ransomware, and of course it locked up all their data. And when you think of the downtime, it mentions here 15,000 pounds per hour for them to be down. So it's extremely expensive for them, and really for anyone. But thanks to their IT partner and their provider, they were using Shadow Protect, and still are, by the way, SPX. They were able to go back to images that were not corrupted and in some offsite protected storage and be able to restore back from them. And in less than 4 hours, they were able to get all their machines back up and running and really limit their downtime. So it was a great story, but the simple one where they had a backup that was in a spot that was protected, and they were able to restore back from it using Shadow Protect. Here's another one from Westbrook Industrial, another manufacturing company in the UK, another one. They also fell victim to a cyber attack after installing software, particularly our software. They put it in and everything, and sure enough, 4 weeks later, they were hit with ransomware. And it took them some time to find out what had happened. it happened the day before. It took them till afternoon the next day to really notice that they've been locked up, or their data had been. And what was great is they identified the problem, and within 45 minutes they were back to work because they had backups that were protected, and they had a good protection that they were able to restore back from. And even back to based on that loss or of revenue and downtime, they think they saved 70 pounds. I know these are British pounds, but 70,000 pounds by having a StorageCraft backup that they were able to use during this ransomware attack and restore. So really paid off really big very quickly. And just to quote them, their advice to any company is to review your cyber strategy and procedures every 3 months. That's the once a quarter I said earlier. Be sure to have an excellent disaster recovery plan in place. Again, if you don't have a plan, you won't be able to have the great outcome they did where you can restore in 45 minutes and get back up and running. Now, I want to jump into cloud services a little bit. Again, that's my focus at our company here at StorageCraft, but I want to explain a little bit just what that is and how that works, and give you a couple more use cases where this was able to be part of a disaster recovery plan and help someone recover. So let's start at the basics. What is it? Our cloud services, although the name is generic, it's very purpose-built. A disaster recovery cloud that was designed specifically for this case. There's a lot of other things out in the market that you could use, that you could piece together, different solutions to try to come up with this, but we've pre-packaged this fully built, ready to go for disaster recovery. And really help you protect that your business systems, your data, and have that continuity when disaster strikes and you need to recover quickly. So some of the key features here, it's a simple, a flexible solution because we give you different options on what you can do, and I'll explain those in just a minute. But it's a service that runs on our data center in the cloud, so you don't have to install anything on your end for this piece. There's no storing of the data there. But you can log into a partner portal, as we call it, which is a web-based console, and you have total control. You can manage your different machines, the retention, the recovery points, even the recovery back to your site. You can manage and do all that yourself. You're not dependent upon us to do that. We really like to say that you have total control. And again, that's self-service. You can spin up a VM anytime, a virtual machine that'll run in our cloud and do that at will. In our data centers, we use the military grade type security, right? We've got encryption. We do have the security, the multi-level security for access physical to the data center. They're all tier 3 plus. For your region, we use the NextDC data center in Sydney, if you're familiar, so we use that. Many other major cloud providers of services utilize their same facilities. And really, with that, we get that 5 nines of uptime and 24/7 monitoring, not only from them, but from our own network operations center who's watching and making sure that things are happening as they should there in our data center. So with our cloud services, fundamentally, we have 3 service levels: Cloud Basic, Cloud Plus, and Cloud Premium. And Basic, just like it sounds, is simple and secure offsite storage that's sitting out in our data center. And if you have the need to recover that machine image, you can download it straight from our site through that portal, or we'll even put it onto what we call a BMR drive, which is a bare metal restore drive, and ship that to you. Depending on bandwidth, that sometimes is much easier. So Plus is just building on top of that, where not only can you download and recover the image, but if, say, you just need a simple file or folder, you can mount that image in our cloud and be able to search for that and pull that data right back to your site or your client or partner site as quickly as you need to. And then Cloud Premium, as it says, is the premium one. It's got all the whistles and bells where you have all those features plus full virtualization, where you can now fully fail over to our cloud. If, for say, your entire data center went down or your environment goes down, you can virtualize all your systems, machines, your networking, and have that full disaster recovery as a service running on the StorageCraft cloud. and that's Cloud Premium. So those are the basics of the 3 offerings we offer today. One of the things that I like to mention is we have what's called a virtual machine policy, where we have one-click orchestration, where you can go in and set up your different machines and their dependencies so that everything, when a disaster strikes, starts and runs just as you need it to. So for example, maybe you've got a license server or some database server, SQL server, something that needs to come up to speed and be running before other servers in your environment come up and start running. And so here's a place where you can define that policy and set those dependencies. And once it's all set up, you can test it. And again, when you're in that disaster scenario, at the click of a single button, you can now spin up your environment in our cloud and really help you for that recovery time objective to get back up and running very quickly. So I want to just bring up a couple use cases where ransomware hit and how our cloud services really help to restore or help people to restore from that ransomware attack. So the first one I mentioned, I can't mention names, but an IT service provider here in the US, they were utilizing an RMM tool, remote management, and excuse me, I'm coughing here. But an RMM tool across all their client accounts, and they had 30 plus different clients. And unfortunately, ransomware had taken and exploited a security hole in that RMM tool, and it ended up encrypting all of their clients' machines that they were managing with that tool. And it also it corrupted their local backup. So even though they had a great policy, great plan, they were backing up all of those machines to a local repository. And then they had signed up for our cloud services and were replicating those offsite. But this ransomware was done, it was smart enough, if I could call it that. It was able to encrypt both their local backup and the original machine. So they were in a really bad spot with over 200 machines across those 30 different clients, all of a sudden not having access to their data. Again, fortunately, they were also using our StorageCraft cloud services. So all of that data was replicating to our cloud, incrementals and dailies up every day. And basically we were able to work with them and go back to a recovery point before the ransomware attack had happened, which happened to be just a couple days before. And we're able to help them restore copies of all the machines that they had lost. And there was over 80 terabytes of data. So it was quite a bit that they had to restore quickly, and we were able to work with them to get all that out of our cloud and back to them through downloads, BMR drives, as I mentioned before, and also a few virtualizations where they simply flip over to our cloud and we're running in our cloud. Another one I want to mention is just a retail sales client, mid-sized retail, east coast of the US. They were in a similar situation where, again, ransomware had corrupted their point of sale machines. So if you can imagine you're a retail business, that's really the lifeblood of what makes your business run, as it talks to both inventory, it manages, the money, the transactions, those type of things. And they got hit in an afternoon, and it also corrupted their local backups. So they were really in a bad spot because they simply in a lying down, kind of business down scenario due to this ransomware. And of course, they didn't want to pay the ransomware, and they'd been using our StorageCraft cloud services, which again gave them an opportunity to restore without having to pay a ransom. And they did just that. We were able to work with them to get to recovery points out of our cloud and replicate them down. And we utilized a lot of BMR drives in this case, and even were able to expedite some things same day. So we did a point-to-point air service with them, and we were able to get them back up within hours of them receiving those drives with all the data, so that the next day they were able to keep going with their business. So they had a little downtime, but not as much as it could have been. Really a great story where working together, we were able to help them. Our services in terms of the product, but also with people and just willing they were willing and we were willing to do whatever it takes to help them get back up and running. And it turned out to be a much better scenario than if they hadn't had that. So shifting gears just a little bit, I also want to mention our cloud backup for Office 365, especially with the work from home scenario that we're all facing worldwide. The need to have protection is just becoming even more important for Office 365. And we also back up G Suite, but I'm going to talk about Office 365 specifically. In today's world, SaaS, do you use SaaS, software as a service? It's becoming quite the normal where not many are hosting their own applications unless they're specific to their needs or business. But some of these more general Office, CRM tools, even their support desk and different things, they're managing through a service. I'm sure you may recognize one or two of these that you utilize in your own company in these logos. But again, I want to focus on Microsoft Office 365. They've grown very quickly, about 21% year over year, which turns out to about 3 to 4 million users a month is how quickly they're growing. I think we'd all love to have that many users a month in our business, but they are growing. And one of the key things they do, of course, they're responsible for the infrastructure, that availability and the security, and they do some basic short-term recovery, and Microsoft does that. And that's what they provide. Unfortunately, people don't realize that that's all they do. Their job is not to protect your data. It's the infrastructure and the services that they guarantee. So despite it being in the cloud, it's very important that you have a disaster recovery plan for your data, even in Office 365. It's still prone to incidents such as, human error. People make mistakes, delete something and not realize it. Some malicious type of deletions. There's hacking and even malware, and it'll affect OneDrive, and when it syncs up to Office 365, now whatever was deleted or removed by that malware is now up in the cloud. And simply programmatic errors, you're installing some software that affects it, no one knows about it. 30 days later, you go get the data and it's gone. And because of that, it's important that you have a plan in place even for that. So that's what cloud backup is all about, to protect that type of data. And again, I'll go through this fairly quickly, but our cloud backup solution is truly cloud-based. There's no agents to install or anything. It's completely agentless. It runs as a service in a cloud and protects the Office 365 and your SaaS solutions where kind of pick up where they left off. And so today we back up, Exchange, which is your mail, your calendars and contacts, your OneDrive, SharePoint, your shared folders, as well as your Teams data. Teams has been used pretty heavily lately, and again, one more thing that you want to make sure you're protecting the data and the documents and things that you're sharing there. On Google G Suite, just want to mention kind of a complementary set of services where we protect the Google Gmail, the Google Drive, and the same calendars and contacts and shared folders, same type of thing there. And just at the highest level, again, the idea of cloud backup is we do multiple backup scans every day, about every 8 hours of your Office 365 data, agentless, as I mentioned. And you have a couple options in terms of storage where we store it on our account, which is basically backed by AWS, or you can use your own Azure account where you can just put in your credentials and the data will be stored there. We have unlimited capacity and retention, so you don't have to worry so much about that. And then again, through our partner portal, you have access to restore and get that data whenever you need, really designed for you to have total control. So just kind of recapping here, I want to go back. Ransomware, it is truly a disaster recovery causing event. When prevention fails, you have to have a DR plan. So I hope that you will review that and simply make a plan, document, test, and review. Remember that cycle we talked about. Make sure you're ready. And of course, being from StorageCraft, we have data protection and disaster recovery plans to help you from Shadow Safe, Shadow Protect, our cloud services and cloud backup, which I just kind of shared a little detail on. Great solutions to be part of that disaster recovery plan. And just hit again on our next generation products of OneSafe, physical storage there, to ShadowSafe, the data protection software, and cloud services where you have disaster recovery in the cloud. And those together can be very powerful, as well as customizable to whatever you need. Maybe only one is all you need. Maybe a combination of two or all three is what you need, and they're designed to work for you. So really just to go back to StorageCraft, we want to be the one vendor, the one solution where you can customize and right size the solutions to fit whatever you need. Keep it modular and flexible and future proof. And you see it right there. We have solutions that hopefully will be part of that disaster recovery plan, as that is so key to make sure you're ready to recover from any type of issue or disaster that you may see around data. Now, I really want to thank you all for being at the webinar and listening to a lot. I know there's a lot of things we went through there. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly. Hey, thanks so much. Glad to be here. Glad to talk with everyone today.